Hey guys, welcome back to Willpower Garage. Today we're working on a 2014 Ford Explorer XLT with a heavy-duty braking system, and I'm going to show you how to replace the front pads and front rotors that could potentially save you hundreds if you do it yourself. Stay tuned. As you can see, we've got the car up in the air, the wheel off. I know I'm a little bit privileged. I have a lift here to lift the car up to a comfortable height, but this can be easily done with a set of jack stands and a floor jack. I'm going to emphasize jack stands because anytime you jack up your car, you want the jack stands underneath because that jack can fail. You don't ever want to be underneath a car with just a floor jack. All right, rant over. Here's our braking system in the front. Like I said, this has the heavy-duty braking system. Basically, it's a larger rotor from the standard size. So it has a different rotor and a larger pad. So when you are purchasing your parts, make sure you check to see which rotor size you have so you get the right parts. Aside from that, it's a pretty straightforward repair. We have to remove the caliper, and to remove the rotor we need to remove the caliper bracket, so there are 2 bolts behind there, and then finally we could take the rotor off. There is 1 bolt in the center of the rotor here, or excuse me, not the center. The center is the axle nut. There is a bolt here off to the side of the center that just holds the rotor to the hub. It's its only job there. So one of the things I like to do before I start removing anything is I like to try to compress the caliper as much as I can now while it's still on the car. And the way I do it is with a little pry bar. You can usually get in between the little holes here. And you basically just want to pry that caliper in. And what that's doing is it's actually retracting the pistons so that I can now get in there when I have this all taken apart, and the caliper will come off much easier. The other thing it does is now I don't have to use any kind of special clamps or retracting tools to get the pistons in. Generally, I can get the pistons in enough that all I have to do is put the new pads in place and then slap the caliper back on where it belongs. After I retract the caliper piston, now we could remove the caliper. This is a 17mm bolt on the top, and on the bottom here, that will remove my caliper. Anytime you remove a caliper, you don't want to leave it hanging on the brake hose. You can damage it. Basically, you damage it internally, so you won't even see it out here. What happens is the hose will get collapsed inside. Best case scenario is you'll push fluid in, and that caliper won't retract. You'll burn up your brakes and everything else. Or you can actually block it completely so the caliper won't work at all. So I'm going to remove these 2 bolts to get the caliper off, and then I'm going to hang it from something here with a piece of wire or something. Once that is done, I'm going to come in here, and I know it's a little hard to see, but this bolt here is an 18mm, and then there's another one right here, and those 2 bolts are what hold the caliper bracket on, or the pad bracket. And once that's off, finally I'm going to take off this bolt here, and we should be able to remove the rotor. So let's do that now. All right, guys, as you can see, I've got everything off. I've got my bolt off here, but the rotor is stuck to the hub. So I just wanted to show you guys quickly what I do when a rotor is stuck like this. The best thing you do is take a nice dead blow hammer and hit it right on the face of the rotor. Now I'm replacing these rotors, so I'm not worried about any damage here. So, you know, hitting it does not concern me at all. it is the easiest way to shock the rotor to get it off the rust that's on the hub. If you are getting your rotors cut for whatever reason, I wouldn't do this. I'd probably try just hitting around the hub itself till it pops off. You know, nowadays the rotors are so cheap. And again, anytime I do brakes, I always recommend new rotors. On average, the rotor is anywhere between as cheap as $40 to maybe $130, $140 each, depending on the vehicle. I think I got these for somewhere about $70 each. And replacing it with a new rotor and new pads at the same time is going to make for a much better braking system than just throwing pads on an old rotor. So let's get to taking this off. Like I said, I'm going to hold the rotor with my one hand and I'm going to give it a whack. As you can see, he was pretty rusted on there. Even looking the back side of the rotor, look at the amount of rust on there. All right, I want to show you guys real quick the back side of this rotor. This right here is the reason why I often say you should replace the rotors when replacing the pads. If you just looked at the front of the rotor, you could say, okay, it doesn't look so bad. There's a little rust on the outer edges. It's because that's the area the pad doesn't ride on. But you look on the back side, only this small section here is clean. The rest is all rust buildup. And this rust buildup here is actually, I don't know how to put this, but what happens is because it's not smooth, the pad isn't gripping it right, it actually builds up a sort of a gas in between there that lifts the pad away, and you get less braking force. You know, I apologize, I'm struggling for words here to try to explain it to you, but basically you just get poor stopping performance because the pad isn't making the same contact it should. So a lot of times this is on the back side, you can't really see it until you take the rotor off or you get underneath, try to look inside. In the inside, there is a backing plate here, basically what you see here. So it's not the easiest to see the rotor from the inside, but this right here is one of the big reasons why I always recommend replacing the rotors when you replace your pads. A couple of things before we put our new rotor on and start putting everything back into place. I'm going to take a wire brush, clean up the hub here as best as we can. The rotor is sitting against this, so if there is a rust buildup or that rotor is not sitting flat, you can get a pulsation in your brake pedal because the rotor is actually not running straight like it should. So take your time here, make sure this is cleaned up really well, and I would recommend putting some kind of lubricant, grease, anti-seize, something on the hub here so that next time you have to change the brakes, that rotor will come off much nicer. So we're going to clean off this hub here. I'm also going to clean up the caliper bracket or the pad bracket here. Now, the pads I got come with all new clips, but even when I remove these clips here, I want to clean out all that rust buildup and debris that's in there. This is also a good time if you have any of the slides that are gummed up or anything or not really moving well. You want to take those pins. It's a good time to grease these up really well so that they move, because this is what helps the caliper float back and forth. I'm going to put this braking system back together without the time lapse so you guys can see all the steps and how fast this goes back together. So as you saw in my hyperlapse, the hub is now cleaned. I put some anti-seize on the hub so that when the brakes need to be replaced again, the rotor should come off much, much easier. You also saw I cleaned the pad bracket and put the new clips in that, and that's ready to go. Off camera, I cleaned off the caliper itself a little bit on both sides here, so it's ready to go. But the first step is we're going to take the new rotor, and when you buy a new rotor, it comes with like a waxy sort of grease coating on it. You want to clean this off first. So I'm going to just stick this here for a second. I'm going to grab a paper towel and some brake cleaner, and I'm going to spray the rotor down here, and I'm just going to wipe that wax off. I don't care about the rest of the rotor. I just want to get the surface where the pads are going to ride on. So there's the back side. Now we can install the rotor. Keep in mind here, the little tapered part where that bolt goes needs to line up with the thread on the hub. So make sure you install it the right way. On this bolt, put a little anti-seize as well. And then run this bolt down. Okay, then I'm going to run this bolt down. I'm not going to use the impact gun on it because I don't want to strip it out. I'm not sure what the torque spec is for this bolt. I had some trouble finding it, but usually with these bolts, I just sort of run them snug, give them a little tighten. They're not what's holding the rotor to the hub anyway. The wheel is. This is basically just to hold everything in place. So it doesn't need to be tightened very tight. So I'm just going to run that with the ratchet. Once that's tight, now we can clean the other side of the rotor here. So the back side was clean now. Now the front is. Make sure all the grease from handling it is off. Again, just the machine surface where the pads ride. Okay, I'm going to turn this so it's easier to see. Let me readjust the camera a little bit. The next thing to install is the caliper bracket. As you can see, I've got my new slides on here, the metal guides for the pads. I'm going to run these bolts down by hand. And these bolts get torqued down to 122 foot-pounds. Okay, torque wrench set, 122. There's one. There's two. All right, we can now install our new pads. These pads I have here are from CarQuest. Actually pretty cool. They say inner and outer, so you have no confusion of which one goes where. Obviously the inner is going to go inside, like so. And the outer to the outside. All right. Now, assuming I was able to compress my caliper all the way, I should be able to slip this right over the new pads and not have to use any kind of tool to compress that piston. Like so. All right, next thing is our caliper slides. Before I install these, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the slides so these are moving freely. Like I said, if these are at all gummed up or dry, you want to clean this as well as the caliper bracket. Make sure it's all clean and then re-grease both of these to make sure these slide nice and even. All right, so as you can see, I've got grease on both of these. You don't have to put it on the threads, it's just where it slides. Just for reference too, this one here has sort of a plastic bushing on it, and the head of the bolt is a little different. This one was on the lower pin here, and the other one was on the upper. I don't know the reasoning for that, but I'm going to put it back the way it was. Then I could thread these in. And then these bolts are getting torqued down to 24 foot-pounds. All right, that's basically it. That is a complete front brake job on a 2014 Ford Explorer. Now, as you can see, it's really simple. The steps are straightforward. My favorite is using the pry bar to compress the pistons. This is a dual piston caliper, so you're able to compress both while it's on, so you don't have to use clamps to try to retract it. And as you saw, it makes putting it back on to a new pad, which obviously is thicker, much easier. So all I have to do left is the other side and then put the wheels back on. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you found these steps pretty simple to replace the brakes on your 2014 Ford Explorer. As always, if you have any questions, just leave me a comment below. I'll try to answer it as fast as I can and as accurately as I can. But again, I just want to remind you guys, if you can, please share my videos, give me a big thumbs up, and subscribe. So the subscription is what keeps me doing these videos. They are a little time consuming. A brake job I can usually get done pretty quickly, but when I have to film it, it definitely takes me a much longer time to do it. That's not even including the editing. So I want to thank you guys who have subscribed, and if you haven't or are just subscribing now, thanks for subscribing. But that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.